want to thank you all for being here. And I have to say, I think with social distancing that the media has been much nicer. But we took the best economy we've ever had and we said, stop, you can't work. You have to stay home. You know, there's never been a case like this. Normally you pay a lot of money to get. Here's a case where we're paying a lot of money to stop things because we don't want people to be together so that this virus doesn't continue onward. So there's never been anything like this in history. There's never been. Nobody's ever seen anything like this. But we're doing the right thing. We have to get rid of. I mean, our big war is not a financial war. It's a war, and it's a medical war.
Under what conditions would you put the Defense Production Act into action?
Well, if we were desperately in need of something, and we frankly will know about that very shortly. We want to be ahead of. We don't want to do it as it happens, but before it happens, we're going to know a lot over the next 2 or 3 days. We'll know a lot pretty easily if we had known, if everybody had known about it a number of months before people started reading about it.
You said you did.
Excuse me. Before we started reading about it, it could have been stopped in its tracks. Unfortunately, they didn't decide to make it public, but the whole world is suffering because of it.
You did say a few days ago, though, you did have a sense that this was a pandemic that was coming. So why was the United States not prepared with more testing?
We were very prepared. The only thing we weren't prepared, media has not treated it fairly. I'll tell you how prepared I was. I called for a ban from people coming in from China. Laws, in fact, it was your network. I believe they called me a racist because I did that. It was many of the people in the room. They called me racist and other words because I did that, because I went so early. So when you say we weren't prepared, had I let these tens of thousands of people come in from China a day, we would have had something right now that would have been, you wouldn't have even recognized it compared to where we are.
What is your reticence about invoking the Defense Production Act?
I've done it.
But you said that you don't
I've done
want
it,
to
yeah.
invoke
If we find that we need something, that we will do that. And you don't know what we've done. You don't know whether or not we've ordered. You don't know if we've invoked it. You don't know what's been ordered, what's not
By
been
your tweet
ordered.
last night,
I can only tell you that, as an example, masks. Nobody ever heard of the number of masks that's been ordered. They're being made now, and many are available now. But people, I think, in the media probably don't know that.
President, if I could, on China, they reported for the first time since the outbreak no new cases over a 24-hour period. Do you have any reason to disbelieve them? And second to that, the National Security Council yesterday put out a tweet very critical of the Chinese government, saying the Chinese Communist Party suppressed initial reports on the Chinese virus and punished doctors and journalists, causing Chinese and international experts to miss critical opportunities to prevent a global pandemic. Could you explain?
Well, it would have been much better if we had known about this a number of months earlier. It could have been contained to that one area in China where it started. And certainly the world is paying a big price for what they did, and the world is paying a very big price for not letting them come out. Everybody knows. As far as believing what they're putting out now, I hope it's true.
Members of Congress are now being tested positive for coronavirus, and you have almost 24 who are self-quarantining. Do you have any guidance for Congress? Should they?
I know all of them, and I don't know if they're sitting like you people are sitting. You're actually sitting too close. We should probably get rid of about another 75, 80% of you. I'll have just 2 or 3 that I like in this room. I think that's a great way of doing it. We just figured a new way of doing it, but you're actually much too close. You know, you two, you should leave immediately. But look, I know all of them. They tested positive. Hopefully they're all going to get better. And it's one of those things. It's Congress, you know, it's one of those things.
Do you support the idea of the government taking an equity stake in certain companies?
I do. I really do.
The economy is essentially ground to a halt.
Thanks for telling us. We appreciate it.
Stores have closed. Travel has slowed down.
Go ahead. What's the rest of your question? We know that. Everybody in the room knows that.
Or only getting tested if you're showing symptoms, but a lot of this.
Well, no, you should only get. You should. I didn't have any symptoms and I got a test, but I got a test because you people were driving everybody crazy. So that's the only reason. I had no symptoms, but I had a test. And my doctor told me, don't get it. You don't need it. Everybody said you don't need it. But I had to do it because the press was going crazy. And then after I got it, they said, you shouldn't have gotten it. You had no symptoms. You know, the whole thing. So in other words, if you get it, it was no good. But I'm a unique case, unfortunately.
Mr. President, thank you. I have 2 questions. Do you consider the term Chinese?
OAN.
Yes, sir. Thank
Very
you.
good.
I
Thank
have
you
2
very
questions.
much. You treat me very nicely.
Do
Go
you
ahead.
consider the term Chinese food racist because it's food that originates in China or it has Chinese?
No, I don't think it's
And on that
racist.
note,
I don't think it's racist at all.
On that note, major left-wing news media, even in this room, have teamed up with Chinese Communist Party narratives, and they're claiming you are racist for making these claims about Chinese virus. Is it alarming that major media players just to oppose you are consistently siding with foreign state propaganda, Islamic radicals, and Latin gangs and cartels, and they work right here at the White House with direct access to you and your team?
It amazes me when I read the things that I read. It amazes me when I read the Wall Street Journal, which is always so negative. It amazes me when I read the New York Times. Is not even, I barely read it. You know, we don't distribute it in the White House anymore, and the same thing with the Washington Post. Because you see, I know the truth. And people out there in the world, they really don't know the truth. They don't know what it is. They use different slogans and different concepts for me almost every week, trying to catch something. Last week it was, oh, chaos. You see me, there's no chaos. I have no chaos. I'm the one telling everybody to be calm. There's no chaos at the White House. We have unbelievable professionals. It's really, I mean, I think I came up with the term. I hope I came up with the term, but it is fake news. It's more than fake news. It's corrupt news. They write stories without calling anybody. They write a story today. I had a couple of stories where they never call me, ever, that I know of. At least nobody tells me. They'll write a story about me without even asking my opinion on something. It's totally fake. I've never seen, I mean, there is a story in the Wall Street Journal today about, about how we've done a phenomenal job on this. The governors, even Gavin Newsom, who, I'm usually fighting with over the fires, and I think you should do a different kind of a job in the forests and lots of things. We argue a lot, but Gavin Newsom's been very, very generous. Andrew Cuomo's been really very generous. I mean, they're saying we're doing a great job, and everybody's saying, but then you'll read this phony story in the Wall Street Journal, or the Washington Post is going wild lately. I don't know what happened to them. I guess something happened, like we don't call them back or whatever. But the Washington Post, these are very dishonest media sources. They're very dishonest. And you know what? Someday, hopefully in 5 years, I won't be here, and that'll be fine. I will have done, I think, a great job, because I don't think anyone's done as much in 3.5 years as I've done. I don't think, and the administration. This administration's done a great job, but the press is very dishonest.
But more than dishonest, they're siding with state propaganda.
Well, I think they do. I mean, they are siding with China. They are doing things that they shouldn't be doing. They're siding with many others. China's the least of it. So why they're doing this? You'll have to ask them. But if we had an honest media in this country, our country would be an even greater place.
Dr. Fauci said there is no magic drug for coronavirus right now, which you would agree. I guess on this issue,
I think we only disagree a little bit.
Sorry.
I disagree. Maybe and maybe not. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. We have to see. We're going to know.
Is it possible that your impulse to put a positive spin on things may be giving Americans a false sense of hope?
No, I don't think so.
Misrepresenting the preparedness right now.
No, I don't think so. I think that I think it's got
the not yet approved drug.
Not work. And I agree with the doctor. Such a lovely question. Look, work. I feel good about it. That's all it is. Just a feeling. I'm a smart guy. I feel good about it. And we're going to see. You're going to see soon enough. And we have certainly some very big samples of people. If you look at the people, you have a lot of people that are in big trouble. And this is not a drug that obviously, I think I can speak from a lot of experience, because it's been out there for over 20 years. So it's not a drug that you have a huge amount of danger with. It's not like a brand new drug that's been just created that may have an unbelievable monumental effect, like kill you. We're going to know very soon. And I can tell you, the FDA is working very hard to get it out. Right now, in terms of malaria, if you want it, you can have a prescription. You get a prescription. And by the way, and it's very effective. It works. I have a feeling you may, and I'm not being overly optimistic or pessimistic. I sure as hell die. I mean, there's been some interesting things happened and some good, very good things. Let's see what happens. We have nothing to lose. You know the expression? What the hell do you have to lose? Okay?
So what do you say to Americans who are nearly 200? I'll just follow up.
John,
Nearly
go
200 dead. What do you say to Americans who are scared, though? I guess nearly 200 dead, 14,000 who are sick, millions, as you witnessed, who are scared right now. What do you say to Americans who are watching you right now who are scared?
I say that you're a terrible reporter. That's what I say. Go ahead.
I
I think it's a very nasty question, and I think it's a very bad signal that you're putting out to the American people. The American people are looking for answers, and they're looking for hope. And you're doing, and the same with NBC and Comcast. I don't call it Comcast. I call it Comcast. Let me just for whom you work. Let me just tell you something. That's really bad reporting. And you ought to get back to reporting instead of sensationalism. Let's see if it works. It might and it might not. I happen to feel good about it, but who knows? I've been right a lot.
Do their jobs, your message to them.
My message to the American people is that there is a very low incidence of death. You understand that. And we're going to come through this stronger than ever before. If you get it, if you happen to get it, it is highly unlikely. It's looking like it's getting to a number that's much smaller than people originally thought in terms of the ultimate problem, which would be death. My message to the American people is, number one, you've done an incredible job. Incredible what you've gone through. It's been incredible. It wasn't their fault. It wasn't their fault. It wasn't the fault of 140 other countries where this has happened. And there is tremendous hope. And I think we're going to come out stronger, better, bigger in every way. I think we're going to be a better country than we were before. And we learned a lot. We learned on reliance, who to rely on, who not to rely on. But our country has been incredible, the way they pulled together, including the fact that I just spoke to Senator Schumer. We had a wonderful conversation. We both want to get to a good solution. But it's been really, for me, watching and seeing people that weren't speaking, getting along well, because we all have one common aim, and that's to get rid of this invisible enemy, get rid of it fast, and then go back to the kind of economy that we had, and maybe even better.
You said the other day you see yourself as a wartime president right now, leading the country through this pandemic that we're experiencing. Do you really think, going off on Peter, going off on a network is appropriate when the country is going through something like this?
I do, because I think Peter is, I've dealt with Peter for a long time. And I think Peter is not a good journalist when it comes to fairness.
But he's asking for your message to the country.
Oh, I think it's a good message, because I think that the country has to understand that there is indeed, whether we like it or not, and some of the people in this room won't like it, there's a lot of really great news and great journalism, and there's a lot of fake news out there. And I hear it all, and I see it all, and I understand it all because I'm in the midst of it. So when somebody writes a story or does a story on television, and I know it's false, I know it's fake, and when they say they have 15 sources have said, and I know sources, they're just making it up, I know that, and I call Peter out, but I call other people out too. And, this is time to come together, but coming together is much harder when we have dishonest journalists. It's a very important profession that you're in. It's a profession that I think is incredible. I cherish it. But when people are dishonest, they truly do hurt our country. Yeah, in the back.
It's more about stock buybacks. Many of the airlines and Boeing did stock buybacks. Is this a deal breaker for you in this?
No, but I never liked stock buybacks from their standpoint. When we did a big tax cut, and when they took the money and did buybacks, that's not building a hangar. That's not buying aircraft. That's not doing the kind of things that I want them to do. And we're now talking about buybacks. We didn't think we would have had to restrict it because we thought they would have known better. But they didn't know better. In some cases, not in all cases, obviously. Some people did an incredible job. They built plants all over the country. I mean, you'd see what's happened. I mean, we were doing, until this invisible enemy appeared, we never had an economy like this. But there were some companies that used that money to buy back stock, driving up the price of the stock artificially in many cases. I don't like that. I don't like it. And as far as whether or not we'll have that, allow them, when we give them money, because we have to keep these great companies in business because of the workers, frankly, for the most part, because of the workers. The workers are my number one concern. But the way we take care of the workers is we have to keep the companies going. I am fine with restricting buybacks. In fact, I would demand that there be no stock buybacks. I don't want them taking hundreds of millions of dollars and buying back their stock, because that does nothing. Secretary of State Pompeo is extremely busy, so if you have any question for him right now, could you do that? Because you know what I'd like to do? I'd like him to go back to the State Department, or as they call it, the Deep State Department. You don't mind?
Did it undermine you at all when the president stands up here and he attacks news outlets calling us untrustworthy?
Somebody else have a question?
So how do you respond to those remarks by Mayor de Blasio?
Well, I just think this.
I'm not dealing. When will those supplies arrive?
I'm not dealing with him. I'm dealing with the governor, and the governor agrees with me, and I agree with him. So far, we've been very much in sync. I guess they're not agreeing with each other necessarily, but the relationship with New York, I love New York. I grew up in New York, as you probably have heard, and the relationship's been very good. And I think government and the governor have been getting along incredibly well with the federal government. Just so you know, just for the probably 100th time, this administration, inherited an obsolete, broken, old system that wasn't meant for this. We discarded that system, and we now have a new system that can do millions of people as you need them.
Washington Post ran a story suggesting that you delayed taking action on the virus in January and February. Dr. Fauci has indicated that your action in the Chinese travel ban helped America immensely. What do you say to the Washington Post?
Well, I love whoever you're with. That's because I think that's such a nice question. No, I think the Washington Post covers us very inaccurately, covers me very inaccurately. I saw the story. I think it's a disgrace. But it's the Washington Post, and I guess we have to live with it. It's a very inaccurate, quiet. It's a very inaccurate story. From many people, I get a lot of credit for having closed our country very early to a very heavily infected country. China, unfortunately, China. I wish China would have told us more about what was going on in China long prior to us reading about it, even though the news isn't exactly disseminated. As you know, China kicked the Washington Post out of China, and they kicked the New York Times out of China, and I guess the Wall Street Journal. That's okay. I mean, that's what they do, and I think it's a terrible thing they did. But I also think it's terrible when people write inaccurately about you, and they write inaccurately about me every single day, every single hour. And by the way, your group really, I really think, and I just say fair, not good or bad. I think you write very fairly and do very fair reports about the great job that all of us are doing, that this group behind me is doing. It's so insulting when they write phony stories that they know are fake news, because they're not insulting me, they're insulting everybody, these incredible people that have worked so hard, so long, that are thinking about nothing other than this invisible enemy. They have done such an incredible job, and they will continue, and we're going to win, and there'll be a lot of celebration when we win. And we're going to win with as few lives lost as possible. That's the game. Win with as few lives lost as possible. It's a tough enemy. It's a tough killer. Far bigger, far more vicious than ever before. But I appreciate you saying it, because the fact that we closed so early to China, and most people, hey, look, I was called xenophobic by Sleepy Joe Biden. I was called a racist by Democrats, a racist. I was a racist because I decided that I didn't want to have people that could hurt our country come in. And I was pretty much in a very small group of people, I will tell you. It was a tiny little group. Most people, even that worked in the White House, disagreed with me very strongly. Saving of those many weeks was a tremendous thing. And when they keep talking about acting early, that was the ultimate act.